Good evening. Tonight is the October 28th, 2020 special board meeting for finalizing the fiscal year 21 budget. We do not have a quorum here present physically, so we will be meeting per the governor's emergency meeting orders. As president of the Concord School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to the executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. The business we intend to conduct today is necessary due to the need to plan or to finalize our fiscal year 2021 budget. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously. There actually is. You may come down here to the high school, the Krista McAuliffe auditorium, but we will also utilize Microsoft Teams for this meeting. All board members have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary and desired, participate in this meeting through a dialogue and by dialing the following phone number, area code 925-391-1169, and conference ID number 983-748-633, followed by the hashtag or pound sign. Jack, is that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. And by clicking on the link provided in the sau8.org website, or by watching the meeting on CCTV's YouTube channel. Are we on YouTube, Josh? Probably. We may not be on YouTube. We may just be on the Concord TV website, but typically we're on www.youtube.com/ConcordNHTV, and hopefully you can observe us on there. A recording of this meeting will also be posted on the CCTV website. Josh, are people able to view through YouTube?
Yep, we're on YouTube.
Excellent, we're on YouTube today. Very good. We will be taking public comment at the end of this meeting through the manner I described above, but you can also email us at concordinfo@sau8.org. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access the meeting using Microsoft Teams or telephonically. The meeting and pertinent instructions are posted on the website of the board at sau8.org and have been for more than 24 hours prior to the meeting. They're highlighted at the top of the website. If anybody has a problem, please call area code 603-513-9008. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. All votes will be taken by a roll call vote, and we'll start the meeting by taking a roll call of attendance. With the members, a majority of members participating remotely, any votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by a roll call vote. When the board members acknowledge their presence, could they please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting as required by the right to know law. So now that I've taken care of the formal part of this, let's just take an attendance. Ms. Cannon?
I am present, and I am actually joined by my daughter in the room, who I don't think has a deep and abiding interest in the budget.
Thank you, Ms. Cannon. Mr. Croto?
I am present, and I am alone in my room here.
Thank you. Mr. Crush? Okay. Mr. Crush is not present at this time. Ms. Higgins?
I'm here and by myself for the moment.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
present and alone, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Poinier.
Here.
Ms. Redmond-Skora.
I am present, and there's no one in the room with me.
Thank you. Ms. Smith.
Here.
Thank you. And I am Jim Richards, and I am present as well. Let me go through the district or central office staff present. Here, physically present, is the superintendent, Kathleen Murphy. We also have the business manager, Jack Dunn, present, and I'm looking to see, it looks like we have our district treasurer, Clint Cogswell, present. If there is anyone else from the district or central office staff, could they identify themselves? Or Jack, can you identify them?
Sure.
Okay.
Do not see anybody else.
All right. I think that is everyone. Thank you all for your patience. Tonight's meeting is to review and finalize the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Mr. Dunn, I believe you have a presentation for us.
I do.
Well, you may proceed.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir, you can. Can you admit Mr. Crush?
Okay. I'll break that out for a moment until we can see that Chuck is on. Okay. I'll get started, all right, Jim?
Go right ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Dunn, at your leisure, please.
Okay. All right, so tonight's presentation for the board is on your Google Drive under Board 2020, full board, and that's the file name. These are the board members that are present physically, and those are the members that are present virtually tonight. Tonight's agenda is to just show a history of these meetings. We're going to review the FY21 budget and make a recommendation to you. Then we'll open it up for any questions, public comment, and then proposed motion. So this is a history of these meetings for the last 8 years. Tonight's meeting, October 28th, 2020. And the FY21 budget. This is an overview of the budget that you passed on April 13th. We have not changed that budget from a appropriations standpoint. That is still the same number. What I want to highlight is that you see down the bottom the projected tax impact that we had estimated back in April would have been a $13.44 rate per thousand. That was an 18-cent increase. On the state rate, it would have went down 6 cents, 2.93 cents, for a total of $15.43. Based on the valuation that came in, we're looking at $13.19. The current rate for the current year is $13.26. So it's going to go down 8 cents or 0.57%. The state rate is currently $2.05. It's going down to $1.88, which is 17 cents per thousand, or an 8.29% decrease. So the total rate is $15.07, or a 24-cent decrease. The current rate is $15.31, and I'm going to show you that in a few slides. Again, one of the things we wanted to highlight, we did at the Finance Committee meeting on the 30th of September, was the impacts on the general fund budget as it relates to salaries, the benefits, snow plowing, supplies with, I repeat PPE 3 times because that is something that's significant right now. The utilities, postage, technology, and negotiations as we negotiate 4 collective bargaining agreements this year, plus memorandums of agreement. In your packet that is on the folder, I gave an updated handout to what we gave to the Finance Committee, which lists all the expenditures and revenue, as well as an individual revenue report that's showing where those changes are. I'm going to move on to the revenue. And everything in red are revenue items that have been impacted by this year by local, state, and federal. I think for the purposes so you can see what I'm referring to as it comes to revenue, because that is the most significant, I am going to share on the screen what that looks like. Just give me a moment. So in your folder, you should see something that looks like this as all part of that document. Hopefully the font is okay for those that are coming in remotely. But everything that's in yellow are items that we've adjusted. And you can see what that adjustment amount is to the right all the way down. And this is broken out by local, state, and federal based on the projections that we know right now. I'm going to go back to the presentation, move on to the next couple of slides, and then I'll open it up to questions if that's okay. One other thing I wanted to highlight to you, if you can see on the screen, is the food service program. We mentioned in the Finance Committee it's something we were keeping an eye on. But to give you an idea of where things sit at the moment, as of today, the salaries and benefits, we've spent $159,222. We have actually paid out expenses for food supplies, dues and fees, or any contracted services that we might have of $130,424. So right now, total, we've spent $289,646. On the revenue side, if we take the meals that have been distributed up till today, what's important to note is up until December, and it is likely will continue, all meals will be free regardless of the student's status, whether free, paid, or reduced. The reimbursement rates are there at $2.29 for breakfast and $3.58 for lunch. And again, that's for any student. So far you can see by month how many meals we've sold. In September, how many in October, with a grand total number of meals. And then I multiply that rate to give you the revenue, and the revenue is about $117,000 so far. So right now the program is at a loss of $172,000. If you go to the next column over, I just took simply how many payrolls we've had, which has been 5 pays, and we have 22 for the year. So I divided this by 5, times it out, and I'm looking at a salary and benefits of about $700,000. I took the current expenses, divided that, and ran that out for the year. So I'm looking at a total expense this year of about $1.3 million. Normally their budget is 1.9. When I look at the revenue, I simply took, we're running about 62,000 for the month of October. So as we said, once we had the kids back, we would probably see an increase in the meals, and we've started to see a slight increase in those meals. Again, September's a full month, October is not a full month yet. Some of the schools lag by a couple days. So if we run at 62,000 a month for 10 months, the revenue will be 620,000. That's going to put a loss to this program this year of $732,000 if these numbers come to fruition. Now remember, we are running the program out in the community by delivering meals, and we're also running in the schools, and we're also making it available for pickup. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So here is a breakdown of the projected tax impact as we went through the process. As I mentioned, the FY20 rate that you finalized last October and for this current tax year was $13.26 for the local, $2.05 for the state, for a total of $15.31. When the board approved its budget on the 13th, we had expected a 12-cent increase, or a 0.78, with a total rate of $15.43. When we went to the finance committee with raw numbers, not knowing the valuation and not making some of the adjustments that we made with revenue, we were looking at doubling at a 24-cent increase to $15.67, or a net 1.57% increase, but a 3.17% increase on the local rate. So you go from $13.26 to $13.68. We've worked the last month to get everything in place, and the valuation came in, and you're looking at a local rate of $13.19, or a 0.53% decrease, so about 7 cents. State going down about 17 cents. So the cumulative rate we estimate to be at $15.07, or a negative 1.57% decrease. Questions? Oh, Chuck, sorry.
Hey, how you doing, Chuck?
Good, how are you?
Good. So and this may be in some of the folders, so I apologize if you've covered this and it's already been asked and answered. So I'll put that out as my initial disclaimer.
Yep.
Given the landscape we're in, and I saw you had listed PPE under supplies, certainly understandable, and certainly it's all kind of a wild card. My question is, have we done anything like with mental health, special education, things like that, in anticipation of kind of what's going on right now and in the uncertain future for this budget year?
I might have to leave that question to Kathleen as it relates to future plans. I can tell you this. One of the other reasons we're not recommending you touch the budget as it is and we let the tax rate drop is we understand, you know, the status in the community. Things are fluid, but we did go through most of the CARES money, or we expect all that to be spent. But the governor is now going to be giving every school district 200 hours per pupil, which we have not received it yet. I have a meeting on that tomorrow or Friday that the DOE is holding, but we are looking to get an additional $840,000.
Is that money earmarked for anything, or is it up to the local school board or district to decide, or is it state DOE mandated?
We'll find more specifics tomorrow, but I'll defer to Kathleen to see if she has more through the Superintendent's Association.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to plan my perspective as for our infrastructure, because who knows what, I mean, from special ed, mental health. I don't know. I don't know. This is certainly taking a toll. I just would like for us to have some money and some plans for the infrastructure to support our students and community.
So, and that's part of why we didn't want to propose making these changes, knowing that money coming. You know, we refinanced the elementary school bond, and that saving is still sitting on the expense side. You also have $1.6 million in a health risk reserve. Remember, we put $2.4 million away in June, and we felt, okay, we have enough to stabilize.
I remember that, yeah.
If we need to come back to you for this budget to go into that, that's what we'll do.
Okay,
But I
so
don't
there's some
feel-
money there, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I would not have come to you with this recommendation if I didn't feel we had enough pulling of levers
Right.
to manage the school year.
And it's just the uncertainty from my perspective
Absolutely.
of everything.
Correct.
Thank you.
Would it help?
Superintendent, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I'm going to try to answer some of Chuck's questions. They were great questions. Chuck, we have about $150,000 left on our CARES money, so we haven't spent that yet, but we've been using it to support students, special education students, by hiring additional educational assistants and monitors to be with the kids. So that's one way we spent the money. We also added additional nursing services at our schools, which is really critical around all of the issues that come across every time the youngsters come into school. Actually, today I hired another special education teacher because we knew that one of our teachers was doing remote teaching at another school, but I needed that special education teacher in the existing school. So we just, as a matter of fact, today made an offer for another special education teacher. That money was not in your operation budget, but I can use the CARES money and I can use the new money, $35 million, that we will be getting a portion of, you know, that $200 times the number of students we have.
Yep.
That money will be available to the district on November 9th. And so on Friday morning, we have a conference call with the Department of Ed to give us all the particular details. It's not a grant. It's a, here's the money, and we don't have to write it up as if it were a grant that needed to be approved. We can use the money as we see fit for our students. I think the second question is even more important, and that's the question you have around mental health. You know, we are very concerned about our students. I spent 2 hours on the phone this afternoon talking about our policy around suicide. What does that mean? What kinds of supports? What kind of area agencies do we have in the community that can help us with that? So again, that's a place that we'll use that money because that was not built into your current budget. I don't know if that helps, but we're still...
No, it does. It answers it perfectly. Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, Jack, as well. I just, you know, as we've said, and we all know, there's so many wild cards. I'm concerned about mental health. I'm concerned about food. I'm concerned about special... you know, I was hoping we'd be in a different place at this meeting, but we're not. So, thank you.
Tom, you had your hand up, or have your hand up?
Yes, I did. So, Chuck, those are great questions, and thank you for asking those. Jack, it's just remarkable that you're able to get this budget in a 1.57% decrease, and without really dipping into our revenue and our I mean, not our revenue, but our funds that we have put aside. The question I have really is, if you look through your 5,000 foot in the sky lens and talk to us and future board members about what are the big things that you as a business administrator are concerned for next year's budget, which you'll all be talking about sooner than we think.
So let me do this, because I did not plan on touching on that. So I hid the slides, but I have it. So let me just pull it up for you. So
I knew you would.
And I think I've said to you ever since last year when we were developing the FY21 budget, I felt okay with that one. It was 22 coming up with the state biannual budget. So you can see on your screen right now what I'm seeing, which says Finance Committee. I copied that slide from the other. Do you see that? It may be a little difficult to read. I'm going to try to blow it up a little bit, if that makes it a little better. But you do have 4 negotiations for next year, but whatever you negotiate this year will impact FY22, but then you'll have the expense of negotiating those groups as well. New Hampshire Retirement has announced its rates. They are going to increase. That's a given. It's already approved, and that will take effect July 1. So that impact, the teachers alone, if we took the current year salaries and just changed it from the 17.8% that you see here, that's the current rate, and moved it to the new one, that's a $1.1 million add just because that number changed. That doesn't include salary increases and step increases. That is the current year salary. So that number can't go anywhere but up. And then the non-teacher rate went up from 11.17 to 14.06. So again, that's close to a 3%. Teacher was over 3. On a current year salaries, that's a $251,000 add, just on current year. It was just to give you a flavor of what that impact is alone. And then we get into healthcare premiums, which we'll get those rates probably certified, and they'll give them to us, I think, the first week in November. But we're expecting a mid-single digit increase. We've done a lot to try to manage those. That's likely going to be between a $450,000 and $475,000 increase to the budget. And then your current enrollments. I had, when we did it that night, 130. I think it may be up a little bit. But, you take that 130 and times it by $3,702 per kid, that's over $500,000 in revenue from adequacy. So
All right.
that's just 3 high-profile ones I look at for us. And then, I start to think about, the city. They have a budget they have to prepare. They'll have their own challenges. What's that growth look like? This year, it's pretty significant. You'll get as part of the superintendent's letter, I will send out the letter that went to City Council. They send every year of what the assessment was. That's public and it's out there already, but I'll include it as all part of her package. And then, what's their revenue look like? County, budget, and revenue. And then on the state, as you know, we had the economic impact of COVID-19. What are they going to look at for their revenues? And they're going to be preparing a biannual budget. So what is that going to be? Don't know. And then obviously with federal, are we looking at any additional stimulus funds? A lot of the grants have gotten extensions to be able to spend money that was not spent, but it's all moving and shaking. And we're doing the best we can with it.
And you certainly are. And thank you for that. It's important for everyone to hear, not only what we're doing educationally and socially for our kids, but what we're looking at for taxes in the future. Thanks, Jack.
You're welcome.
Jack, Liza has a question. Ms. Poinier, go ahead.
Sure.
Thanks. Jack, given everything you just told us about next school year and the major increases that we're going to see in certain areas, does it make sense to, instead of going with the 13.19, go a little bit closer to the approved 13.44 and saving a little bit more, knowing that we will need it? And can you explain, for everyone's benefit, how saving money or bringing in more tax revenue this year could offset a spike in the year to come? Thank you.
No problem. So when you put your money away in June, That is all one-time money. It was money that was already collected. If you go up to the 1344 and collect that, it's kind of a double whammy for folks, because not only did the market go up and they get charged on that rate, the rate went up. So it's a double. When you say in this report, it says that the average home is $268, it's now $288. So imagine the $20,000 and then have that big of an increase in the rate, going from 1326 to 1344. It's going to be a couple $100 for people. And just understanding from the joint city school board meeting about the request to try to keep things at a minimal, understanding the commercial market discussions that were had, just felt that, okay, I think we can manage this. You've put, again, $2.4 million. You have a little over 5 into your reserves and your trust funds. The worst thing that I would think of, going back to Tom's question, is what am I thinking about, is if there's a correction and the valuation goes the other way. That's what I worry about. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's a significant growth this year. It looks good, but I don't know.
Quick follow-up, Jack.
Yep.
What would the impact be if we kept the tax rate at 13.26? I understand that the assessments have gone up, and that would be a hit, even though the rate is steady, the valuation has grown. I'm just trying to think ahead, knowing that there will be expenses that we can't anticipate and some that we can, and trying to protect this board and the district from scariness in next year's budget.
Right. I can calculate that for you, and I have it because I had one at 1325, but I just couldn't get comfortable with the overall, not knowing everybody's going to be assessed differently. But I have that, and I'll produce it. I may need a break to go through and just make sure I could tell you what that would raise and what that would potentially mean. But if that's okay, and let me just continue on. The other thing I'm looking at is, you know, we got to last year, we had $2.4 million more than what we needed to go into this budget. You know, if there's a shutdown, we're not running at full staff. The buses aren't fully running. So I'll give you an example. Usually we spend about $12,000 a month in gas, 12 to 14. The gas bill for the buses last month was $7,900. So how many other things, and could there be savings? So I will tell you selfishly, being in this position, give me all the money you can. Makes my job easier. I just don't think it's the right thing to do for me. That's all. I'm trying to balance it. It is tough, but knowing what's the environment out there, I think I'm just trying to heed to the overall community and what we had heard back. But I will give you that number.
Thanks, Jack.
You're welcome.
Mr. Parker.
Thanks, Jack. You know, it's a simple answer. I appreciate you keeping the tax rates lower, because as the value of our properties go up, we're going to be paying more taxes. So we're going to be paying more one way or another. I mean, the fact that we can keep our tax rates lower on the school budget helps overall for the fact that we're going to be paying more taxes on our homes. It's pretty simple. I mean, we're going to be paying more one way or another. We just don't need to get more money from families on the school bill, especially if the population's decreasing by 130 students. I know the argument about, well, you know, it's still going to cost us the same. I agree with that argument, but I would just say from a public tax standpoint, we need to justify that. So I appreciate your response to that auditing sort of question. So it's challenging, needless to say, but we're going to be paying more in tax one way or another in the midst of a pandemic when a lot of people are really challenged. So thank you.
Ms. Higgins, did you have your hand up? You're still muted.
I did. No, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good. Thank you.
Excellent. So I was just going to sort of echo both sides of this comment. Many times in my years on the board, we've discussed raising tax rates, leaving them high, lowering them in a variety of ways, and I've often likened it to still paying yourself a car payment even after your car's paid off. You're generating a savings account for the next car. And in general, when Liza brought this up, I was initially very agreeable. However, I just did this big ethics project with my daughter. Well, she did the project and I did a lot of analyzing of the data, and it was all around school funding. And the factors that play into how communities arrive at what they have with which to pay for education. There's so much up in the air right now. As much as it might seem fiscal for us to keep as much money as we can, I also think financially people are in a heap of trouble right now, and there's so much uncertainty. And while my income isn't affected by COVID, that's not the case for a lot of people. So I sort of feel like I need to echo the lowering, keeping the taxes as low as possible right now for our community, because really who knows. And so I guess that's all I just wanted to acknowledge that this is a back and forth all the time. But I think you're on the right track, and your intuition, which is typically right on, is right on here.
Thank you. Ms. Cannon.
Yeah, I want to echo some of what Barb said, but also to have us look forward and be aware of the other moving parts in the tax rate. Because I think one of the things that we can anticipate potentially having is the county tax going up because of all of the additional COVID expenses at our local nursing homes, which are in trouble because of all the additional expense there. And to be aware of the other moving parts, which I want to say thank you, Jack, for being aware of all the other moving parts.
No problem.
Mr. Dunn, I have a question for you. And,
sure.
And it's been a good discussion. I guess I'm asking, we had a lot of movement in expenses and revenues this year. A lot of expenses that didn't play out the way we thought they would be, some that are higher. I know that you've done a good job and your best as far as estimating the cost of additional fuel expenses and some of the other things that are coming in. And I, being in the auditorium right now, it's cold, so I know the expenses of heating outside air. What uncertainty is there in your estimates? I mean, these are things that we've never done before. I know you've done a pretty decent estimate, but we haven't gone through the winter. And do we have enough contingency or enough estimate or accurate enough estimate or enough padding in that estimate for 20% higher, 20% lower, or some other variable or variation in these unusual expenses?
So let me just put up something for you from the Finance Committee meeting, and then I'll speak to your question if that's all right.
Absolutely.
So do you see the transfers to the expendable trust funds? See that on the screen?
Yep.
Yes.
So if you look, you see the Energy Reserve, Energy Trust Fund, there's $239,000 in there. So you have $1.5 million in your risk reserve. Like I said, it was almost 1.6. Your instructional trust has almost $1 million in it. The building maintenance fund, almost $1 million. And the special ed trust fund, $879,000. You see what those balances were prior. So you've been able to put in almost 75% of what you originally had on top of it. So I am comfortable with it. As far as what I can't estimate, which I really want to work on doing, is how much money there could potentially be left over at the end of this year. let me go back to another thing, sorry. I want to show you that in your documents, I put in an updated version of my, oh, that's not what I want. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, it is. I'm sorry. Yes, this is what I want. So right now you should see something that's probably looking a little tiny, right? It should say health insurance all the way to the left. See this line? I don't know if my mouse is showing. Is it highlighting? 1,118,000. Do you see that number all the way across?
Yes.
That is how much is in savings in health right now, and normally I'm about $500,000 to $600,000. So I'm looking at these certain buckets and I'm saying, okay, there's things because of either late hiring, people aren't taking insurance, people are on different plans now. You know, grants, if we're not hiring people through grants, because I'll give you an example, 21C. That is not fully staffed because we're not really running as strong after school programs as we normally would where all the schools are running. So some of these funds are just not going to get depleted or be at the levels that they should. So that's what I'm really trying to anticipate. I don't want to overshoot by saying, okay, I'll raise the taxes and collect that, and then I get to the end of the year and say I'm at the same thing. I'm at $4.5 million. It's just a lot. And then how do I start? You know, either giving that back, because it's all one-shot money. So you want to be careful there too, because it's not operational. So I'm just trying to balance those.
Okay.
That's all.
The question, and the one that leads very well in the question I had is, we're not spending that health money right now at the rate that is typical, and that's understandable because people are not doing elective items, people are staying away from their medical facilities for whatever reason. But should things improve for the next fiscal year, should you know, vaccine or whatever reason, I would expect, or I would ask you, what is your thought about the fact that we may go entirely the other way on the pendulum and then have people spending money more than we normally would based on the fact that they've put off their knee replacement or they've put off some elective surgery or just haven't been to the doctor and with the stress and issues associated with the pandemic are in a worse state of health and need more assistance. So what I'm concerned about is having to compensate for that and having a big tax increase in the next budget. And so I guess I'm looking for your reassurance of the analysis of that.
Well, one, you have almost 1.6 million in your risk reserve for health. So if we had to draw on that to supplement it over a little time, we could do that. The other thing is, a couple weeks ago, Larry and I had an extensive conversation with our consultants, Barslow, who we've had since, I think, 2011, when I was on the board, to help us come in and massage the health insurance and get over to a deductible or consumer-driven plan. And the way school care has structured it is they are only taking into account the claims from July through February. They are not counting the down from March until August, because otherwise, exactly to your point, it would create an artificial dip. And then we go down a little bit, almost like the tax, and then all of a sudden it spikes. So what most would happen, because my next question then was, okay, if you're not counting that in, then I understand that they can only hold so much back. So when is the determination made that, okay, we've saved over and above excess, when do we get it back? And that would come back as a premium holiday. So we could potentially see a additional payment holiday later on in the year as a possibility. We already know we're going to get one for next year. They've already told us that. equivalent to this year. We just don't know what the percentage increase is total. So I hope that makes you feel better that they are helping us account for that to kind of smooth the road over than saying, oh, you didn't have any claims, so yeah, it's going to drop 3 or 4%, and then boom, the following year it's up 8 or 9. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Other questions? Ms. Fournier.
Just a quick one. For the additional classroom proctors and teachers that we are hiring, does that come out of the instructional trust or the contingency budget?
Right now, it's coming out of the CARES funds.
Okay.
And then after the CARES funds, I'm assuming that we're going to go after the $840,000 that the state's given us. We don't know if there'll be another stimulus from the federal government, but if in fact it were to come out of the trust, we're going to be coming to you anyway, because we can't touch it unless you vote. That's why we put the money in there. So you'll know.
Got it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Mr. Dunn, I'm going to go back. I'm going to ask a question because I'm going to go back to something that Mr. Crush brought up, and that is, and I guess it's a question for you and the superintendent is, we are in unprecedented times, and we may need more than we even estimated for mental health aid and some individuals that can support our students in the schools in mental health, as well as perhaps some teachers that I know that you've already looked at some of those and some of the teachers, and do we have an adequate amount for the next semester coming up for that situation, given whether we have more people looking to be remote or even more people looking to be hybrid?
I'm going to defer to Kathleen on that, if that's
I think
all
the
right.
superintendent's going to chime in here.
Thanks, Jim.
If you're asking me fiscally, I'm okay.
Thanks. That's a great question because that is pressing right now. Given the fact that we have, as I said to you, about 150,000 left in our CARES from the about 900,000 that we originally received, we are anticipating another federal grant. As you know, it's been held up in Washington, but we do anticipate that they are going to respond to the needs, and it's been the information I have been reading is around schools and supporting schools during this time. So we're anticipating that. I don't have that money in my pocket yet, but I do feel that we will see some of that, very similar to the CARES Act. But the other thing is the $800,000+ that Jack just mentioned from the $35 million that was designated by the governor for schools, of which we are eligible, and that's where we'll use that money for staffing. That's really where we need it. We feel like we're in great shape with materials, with our hardware and software and technology, but I think it's really become a staffing issue. You've heard me talk about that. Come the second semester, we are going to reevaluate our remote, and we're going to reevaluate our hybrid, and looking at our students and the enrollment in those programs and where we need to deploy appropriate staff. And we will have to hire, just like I did today, hiring another special education teacher. The second part of your question is around mental health, and it's huge. I mean, it's just, it's going to be the elephant on the table, if you will. I think that we've seen youngsters who are really struggling and families that are struggling. And so we will be looking at our counselor role, our school counselors. As you know, last year you hired additional social workers and school psychologists, so that's been huge. I mean, that's been a tremendous help to have those additional folks this year that you did not have in previous years. I have not met with that group, but on Thursday we have a meeting around social emotional learning. And so we will hear from all of our staff members around their needs around mental health. And I anticipate we'll be talking with you more about that. I think that's really, that right now we've been using our federal monies. Just to answer your question, Liza, we've been using any resources that we get. And again, we had some additional money from special education, federal money, as well as Title II, we got some extra money. So we've been using that to help us with our expenses.
Other questions?
Yeah, Kathleen, if you can stand by, I have a question for you. It's about the adequacy funds. Has there been any, we talked about this maybe a month ago, and in case anyone watching doesn't know, the adequacy funds that come from the state are calculated based on fall enrollment for the following school year. Has there been any further conversation at the state level that would make us feel a little bit better about next year's adequacy aid?
My response is that there has been discussion around that. We've brought that up. Matter of fact, I brought that forward because I was concerned about the number of students who chose homeschooling. That we are at over 80 students since July 1 that chose to have their youngsters homeschool. That means they come off of our enrollment, and that's, you know, like Jack said, I think it's 3,700 times 80 students. There's a chunk of change. That will not be part of adequacy. We brought this up, though, to the commissioner. And also, we brought the decrease in the number of students who may have chosen to go to a school that was open full-time, 5 days a week, and like some of the local schools. We don't know if those students will come back to us in the fall. We hope they will, but we're not sure. But that is going to affect our adequacy money. So we are working with the Department of Ed, asking them to consider not using those numbers from this fall, our beginning of the year. I just submitted all of the data for beginning of the year to the department, asking them to not use those numbers, but the numbers from last year. I'll keep you posted as soon as I hear any more. I know it's under consideration at the department, though.
Thank you.
Any questions? Other questions? Jack, I'm going to ask you another question, maybe for the superintendent as well as for you, Mr. Dunn. I was reassured to hear about the planning for additional teachers and personnel. One of the pinch points or one of the challenges we have right now is in space. We're committed to maintaining a safe distance. We're committed to keeping our students and teachers safe. We're pushing up, and I credit and I certainly compliment the creativity of the teachers and of the facilities people and Mr. Cashman's group to juggle spaces around so that we are pretty comfortable in hybrid right now. But has there been any planning for, and you know, I almost don't dare say this, but if things get better and more people wish to come back into hybrid in the next semester at some point, is that a possibility? And if and what would be the demands on space? And is there options that we should be looking at funding for temporary space? And I know that's a tough question, but I feel it's important to ask it.
It's a tough question. Yeah, you're right. It is a tough question, but it's one that you have alluded to in previous discussions. And so I've had a conversation with our facilities director around this. As you know, we gained about 10,000 square feet at the high school by using those locker areas, those common areas that opened up. He opened them up. The youngsters don't use their lockers anymore. I don't know if you know that, but that's just not used frequently by our students. They use the backpacks and other things. And we clean those out, and those spaces are now open. I think I sent you a picture this weekend when I gave you my weekly report. And so we're using those spaces. That has helped us tremendously right now. But your question is, looking in the future, what's going to happen in February? And Matt and I are just beginning those discussions. Our our elementary schools would like to go back to using their art and music and gym. I mean, the kids right now are doing all of those things in their classroom. Remember, we wanted to keep those cohorts together. But the principals are pushing a little and saying, you know, we're doing well. We got the distancing. Can we go back to using those rooms, which are well equipped to meet the needs of those programs? So that may open up some additional spaces too as we move around. So I'll keep you posted on that. I don't have an answer for you. We actually talked a little bit about portable classrooms. Would we need something portable? Could we use something like that in addition to, and bring that on campus? And again, we could use the funds that are available to us via the various federal grants.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dunn, if the superintendent did find that it was needed or desirable for temporary structures, especially at, say, at the middle school, at the rental school and stuff, do we have the funds in this budget without making any adjustments to it that we could support that?
Yes.
All right, I'm confident in your, I know your financial analysis abilities, and I'm very confident in your answer. I just wanted to ask the question, so thank you very much.
Well, let me tell you what my thought process would be, that we would look into the budget of stuff that's up and over. If, in fact, we were at a place where we needed to hit your building and maintenance trust fund that has $916,000, we could do that. You also have scheduled a transfer this year into your facilities and renovation trust fund of $1.4 million. So there's various buckets that we would go down and weigh what's the advantage, disadvantage of doing that. But the other thing is, remember, we saved about $424,000 this year by refinancing. That is still sitting in savings right now. It's in the expense side that we're not going to spend, so it's going to, at the end of the year, come out as being your unassigned fund balance. But there's multiple levers we can pull if we need to, and that's why I feel comfortable saying I think we're going to be fine this year.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn, and I'm correct, and I'm assuming I'm correct, and just for the benefit of those folks that are tuned in as well as the board, those trust funds, we can move money into different areas and take out of the trust funds. Either this current board or the next year's board has that ability to do that fairly quickly. In other words, that's pretty liquid.
Yeah, I would just need to schedule a meeting for you to do that. One thing to understand is that once that comes out of those funds, it's going to increase the appropriation, which means you're increasing the budget. So that I'm going to need to do a 10-day process, but that's okay. We let accounts go negative, and we know that that's coming. We can replenish it. It's not a problem.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Cannon.
I just want to say, well done, Jack. I mean, I was really dreading this meeting and what those numbers were going to come back at and what we were going to have to do with the tax rate, and really heaven help some large swaths of our citizenry with tax increases because we didn't have the revenues that we hoped or thought. But you have anticipated that masterfully, and I want to say thank you. As a taxpayer, not just a board member, but as a taxpayer, thank you.
Well, I live here too, so I am trying to be cognizant. We're all in a tough spot.
Other questions? Yes, District Treasurer Cogswell, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
I just want to say that Jack has been doing these budgets a long time, and everybody's right, this community is hurting, but the businesses are hurting more than anyone else, and the city has kind of asked if we could follow suit and do as good a job with the budget as possible and keep it as low as possible. So I think Jack has done a marvelous job to keep the reserves that we need, but also to lower the budget to some extent. Thanks, Jack.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Cogswell. Other questions? Okay, not seeing any, Jack. I think the next step would be public comment, correct?
Correct. One thing before you do that, I just want to make sure I answer Liza's question. So in order to keep it the same, we would roughly need to increase the budget $300,000, and that would get you up to the $13.26. So, and I'd probably be an additional $20-some on a $350,000 house, but it's more.
Thank you. I'll just add
You're welcome.
my thanks to everyone else's for a stellar job on a very difficult budget, and say that I am glad that through your financial leadership, we are able to do something good for the taxpayers. I think it's great.
All right, Mr. Dunn, if you are in control of those folks out there that are asking or have questions to ask, so if anyone out in the public has a question that they would like to ask, please contact us either through Teams or by phone, or Jack, thank you for this public. And I will remind everyone that there is a 5-minute limit so that everyone can have an opportunity to speak. Mr. Dunn, can we put up the phone number or state it again?
Sure. There we go. So the number for audio is 925-391-1169. Conference ID 983-748-633#.
All right, Mr. Dunn, I cannot see if we have anybody. So
I am going to try to share. I'm going to take that off and then try to share, and everybody will see each other. Let's see if you can see this. Okay, you see it?
Yeah.
So you're seeing what I'm saying?
I can.
Okay, so I don't see any hands raised. And that looks like, I think, that's staff. I'm not sure about the last one. And there's no phone numbers, nobody dialed in.
All right, let's, I would, if possible, can we give people a couple of minutes? Sometimes we kind of catch them off guard with public comment, and they take a minute or two to be able to dial in or to call to raise their hand. So if we just take a couple of seconds to let everybody have an opportunity. All right. Mr. Dunn, do we have anybody that's looking to make a comment?
So far, no?
Okay. I will take the time to remind everyone, though, that if you do not want to make a comment tonight but do want to voice your opinion to the board, you can always email the board at concordinfo@sau8.org. We will circulate among the board any comments that come in, and we look forward to and appreciate your comments and taking the time to provide your input. Mr. Dunn, your next item on the...
Not that one.
Not that one, no.
So if we're done with public comment, I will list you a proposed motion.
And Mr. Dunn, this proposed motion would, in a sense, just hold our, we could basically do exactly what we said we would do at the budget, when we passed the budget in the spring. And then the effect on the tax rate is virtually automatic based on our budget, correct?
Correct. And the revenues, the shortfalls we talked about were picked up by the adjustments in the tax rate. And then with the valuation, it was able to bring it down.
Thank you. I was going to clarify that point and ask about the negatives and that they had already been included in here, but you anticipated my question, so that's fantastic. Well, is there, before we go to a discussion, we need a motion. So is there someone who would like to make a motion with regards to the finalizing of the budget? And you'd have to be able to read on the screen there.
Do you want me to read it?
I will make that.
Oh, whomever.
All right. Is that?
Liza, you can read it, I guess.
I'll do it. All right. I move that the Concord School Board adopt a budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 in the amount of $93,396,010, with a general fund budget of $87,702,296, appropriating $55,161,818 in local taxes, and $7,495,955 in state taxes, inclusive of the following deposits and withdrawals to existing funds or expendable trust funds. Deposits. Vocational Capital Reserve Fund for an amount up to $193,918. Facilities and Renovation Trust Fund for an amount up to $1,417,746. Food Service Fund for an amount up to $20,000. And the Renovation and Maintenance Trust Fund for an amount up to $98,665. And also inclusive of the following withdrawals from expendable trust funds to fund appropriations. Special Education Expendable Trust Fund for an amount up to $100,000. Vocational Capital Reserve for an amount up to $125,000. The Instructional Trust for an amount up to $50,000. And the Health Risk Management Reserve for an amount up to $100,000.
I'll second it.
Thank you. That was moved by Ms. Poinier and seconded by, was that Mr. Parker?
Tom.
Oh.
Tom.
Mr. Croto.
Tom.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Discussion. Any discussion or questions? I would add that nice job. I think everybody asked great questions. I would encourage the administration to take note of the questions and concerns as we go through the next 6 months that were brought forward by the various board members. I thought there were some great questions with regards to staffing, and with that, this would be a roll call vote. And with that, I will, since Ms. Higgins is far away and remote, I will call the vote. So, so, Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Mr. Crush.
He left.
He's not here. Okay, Mr. Croto.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Redmond-Skira?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. I was doing that on the fly. I don't think I missed anyone.
You got it.
All right. Thank you. Good, Jack. Good. Thank you for the presentation and the answering the questions. Do you have anything additional for us?
I do not.
Okay. I'll switch an additional, since this is a public meeting, and I want to make sure that we convey information to the public as quickly as we can. But in light of information that was reported to the board by our search consultant, NESDEC, regarding the current environment for recruiting and hiring, I wanted to make sure that we added or expounded the item on our agenda for superintendent search on our regular board meeting on the 3rd. And at this point, based on the discussions that NESDEC had presented, is that we should include a discussion on the timeline of our search for the superintendent and the possibility of postponing it until fall 2021. It's not on the agenda tonight, but I really wanted the school community to be aware of it and to be able to offer their comments and discussion when we discuss it on November 3rd. For the sake of the public, last year we went through a search for the superintendent. It extended into May at least, and because of the current environment, there was not any interest. Actually, the candidates withdrew, wanting not to move from their districts. The current environment is actually just as bad, and when we were speaking with our consultant, Mr. Betancourt, and the NESDEC folks, they're concerned that we would be successful, even after a search, to be able to hire a superintendent that met the expectations and the requirements that we had out there. So I think it's something that we need to discuss. At this point, I guess I'd say to Mr. Croto or to Ms. Smith, do you have anything that you want to add that we can, just as informational, before we put this on the agenda or expand the agenda?
Danielle, do you?
No, I'll leave it up to you.
Okay. Well, I think that it's very important that the community knows that this board is very satisfied with the work of Superintendent Murphy. And I went offline for a moment or two while Mr. Richards was talking, so I don't know if he said that or not, but we are very, very pleased. We know that there have been some tough decisions. There may have been some missteps, and who could possibly blame it with all that's going on with COVID-19? The task has been tremendous to try and get not only kids back to school who want to be and kids at home who want to be, but to give parents as much choice as possible. Those are just some of the things that have been going on. So we'll talk more about it, I think, as we get to our next meeting, but I wanted it to be clear that we're very happy with Superintendent Murphy, and we know what the potential is for garnering candidates during COVID time. So thanks for that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Croto. Ms. Smith, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't think I have anything else to add. I think actually one other thing maybe that we hadn't talked about was just the effort required to assemble that original team back together to continue the search this year. Seemed like a lot of extra pressure on teachers and administrators and business people out in the community. So that was another factor in talking about postponing the search for another year.
Thank you. And
Jim, can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
What we're hoping for, what we're thinking about is, and none of this is in stone, of course, but the thought of having the same superintendent, where we lost our original superintendent, we hired Frank Bass, we had him for a little while, and we got Kathleen. We're looking for some stability in our district. There's so many other things that are going on right now that some stability, at least in one area, not disrupting.
Well, I think we have an internet freeze with Mr. Croto, but hopefully he can reconnect back in. But I will thank him. Thanks for everybody's input on this one. So I wanted to bring this up. Oh, I think Mr. Croto is back. Do you have anything else you wanted to add? You sort of froze on us there.
I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as Mr. Croto said, it's not set in stone. It's actually not even set in stand, because this is just, I just wanted to bring this up now because I wanted the community to have an opportunity to be aware and to give us their input and their feedback, because it's going to be a difficult, or maybe not a difficult, but it's certainly going to be a challenging decision. We have to look at a lot of different aspects, and it's something worthy of the entire board's discussion, and so we would want community input as well, which can be made at the regular meeting of the board on next Tuesday, I guess, next Monday rather, sorry. Or anyone can please, reach out to the board or send the email to, once again, concordinfo@sau8.org. We look for input. Does anybody else on the board have, as I said, I didn't schedule this for a discussion. This is a discussion that we'll have on Monday. Does anybody else have anything that they want to bring up, or anything they want to say? Okay, and I don't believe we need to put it...
Nobody else has anything from a board standpoint. I just want to highlight one thing as it relates to the tax rate, if I could.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Mr. Dunn.
I'm sharing it on the screen. One thing I want to, again, highlight is this part down here, down the bottom. That, remember, the DRA sets it once they have everything. I want to also let you know, because I got a late notice, that the tax rate may change. It may actually go down even a little bit more to $15.04, because they're looking at a piece on the reporting stuff that might need to be moved. So either way, it's all, I think, all good news, but I just want you to be clear that what you saw coming out of here tonight is our best guesstimate. Usually I can hit it dead on, but with people working remote, including people over to DRA, it is a challenge sometimes to get things back either promptly or communicate in the right period of time. And it's just the nature of way we're living today. So I just wanted to let you know that, in case you see, I thought it was going to be $15.07, and it's down a little bit. It's fluid until they finalize, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Dunn, for being so thorough. As I was saying before, we don't need to add anything to the agenda because the superintendent search was already on the agenda. I just wanted to make sure everyone was on the board and in the community aware of the breadth of the discussion. Does anyone else have any other business this evening? And my neck is craning around here. I do not see any hands raised. So if no one has any additional business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. That's me, Barb.
Moved by Ms. Higgins.
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Poinier. I believe this one does not have to be a roll call vote. This can be a voice vote. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much to the team on Concord TV, as always. Great job. Thanks, everyone, and we will have our next meeting, will be the regular board meeting on Monday, November the 2nd, I believe. I could be wrong on the date, but I think it's November 2nd, so. Thanks, and well, I'll say it on November 2nd, too, but don't forget to vote. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Josh. Great job.